Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Hi guys, and welcome to another Fool of the Week. This week's Fool is Carole Malone, but perhaps it should not be Fool of the Week, but something of the month. Perhaps you can find a word that rhymes. It starts with C and it ends with T. Now, the NHS is struggling at the moment, right before a winter crisis. It has lost staff due to the ending of freedom of movement. It is struggling to reduce waiting lists, which have built up during the time the Tories have been in power. And they're trying to juggle the demands of higher wages from staff, training, retention, while not getting any extra money to do so by Boris Johnson's government. The NHS is being destroyed by design people. So Caroline appears on Sky News. Why? I have absolutely no idea. She has no expert knowledge of the NHS. She has not worked in it or with it. She is a right-wing political commentator. She's as qualified to speak about the NHS as I am. For feck's sake. Anyway, Sky News believed it would be valuable to have her opinion on this.
You know, the thing is, Jonathan, we've got to get serious about the NHS. We can't just keep throwing billions of pounds at it every year.
Throwing billions of pounds at it every year. Funding for the NHS has declined in real terms. Okay? And just think about it for a moment. There's a cost of living crisis facing individuals, facing families, facing small businesses, but also public entities like the NHS. Public services are facing a cost of living crisis as well, because costs are going up for them.
2024, I think I read a report recently that said by 2024 the government is going to be spending 40% of all its money on the NHS. That cannot be. The NHS no longer works. It's a great big out of control, wasteful monolith.
I'm trying to keep calm here. You have an idiot, an absolute idiot who understands nothing about the NHS criticizing it. Now, I also have a problem with Sky News bringing people on like this. She's an advocate for, let's, call a spade here. She's an advocate for privatization. Okay, so of course she's going to run down the NHS. The NHS is struggling at the moment because it's doing so by design. This struggle is by design. The Tories want to sell it off. They want to sell it off bit by bit. They've already done that. So in order to make it easier publicly, to make it more palatable, to make the privatization more acceptable to the public, you have to run it down. Run it down in the media, make it more difficult for the NHS to operate. For example, trusts recently were advised to pay doctors and nurses more, but they were not getting any more money from government. So the trusts were expected to maintain staff, but within the current budgets. That's unacceptable. But you'll hear about how the Tories care about the NHS. You'll hear about how the right-wing care about the NHS. But you'll have right-wing commentators like this come on and run it down because they want it sold off.
But you can't say that out in the real world because for a lot of people, the NHS is a sacred cow. And the reason it's not being mentioned during all these hustings, in this leadership campaign, is because no one thinks they're going to get elected if they tell the truth about what has to happen.
The truth. What? The privatization. That's what you want. To sell off the NHS. Every single bit of it. Now, is it because you're benefiting from it? Do you have shares in some private healthcare company? Is she benefiting directly from this? Or is it ideological? She hates the idea of government looking after its citizens. She doesn't like poor people benefiting in some way from the state.
To the NHS.
What has to happen, Carole? You tell us the truth.
It needs to be root and branch reform. It doesn't work anymore. It's wasteful. It's one of the most wasteful organisations in the country. It employs the most people in the country and billions of, if you just look at one little section of the NHS, procurement, for instance, where they're buying things. Why are people who work for the NHS buying things? Why aren't they getting businessmen in who know how to barter?
And there you have it. There you have it. Bring in businessmen to operate the procurement process for the NHS. So introduce a middleman. That's what she wants. She's talking about waste, and she wants to introduce a middleman. So she wants to bring somebody in who will procure the necessities the NHS needs to in order to function. So she wants to add an extra layer. And she's talking about waste. Now, of course, bringing in an extra layer isn't just about waste. It's also about, well, you know, if I work for a particular supplier and then I work for the NHS, then who am I going to choose when I'm selecting the best supplier for the NHS? Oh, it happens to be the same company that I work for or I worked for. Corruption. So she's an advocate for more bureaucracy, an extra layer of bureaucracy, and corruption. Wonderful. These are the people who are advocating for the NHS to be sold off. These people do not care about ordinary people. They never have, they never will. She writes for the Express, for God's sake. I have to be careful with my language. This is why she's our Fool of the Week. See you next time for our next Fool of the Week.